Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to return to a brewery that has featured on the channel a good number of times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the years, and this one is the latest installment in one of my favourite series of beers that they do. So we're going to head up towards Gothenburg once again, Göteborg as you would say in Swedish, the Swedish craft beer capital up there on the west coast. Got to get that Gothenburg catchphrase in when we're reviewing the Gothenburg beers because of channel tradition and all of that jazz. And for this review, we are going to return once again to the wonderful OO Brewing. So this beer is the latest installment from their 50/50 series, which is their series of dual hopped New England IPAs. This one is the 50/50 Citra Simcoe. It comes in at 6.5% as always, and as I've told you already, this one is a New England hazy, whatever you want to call it, IPA. So this beer was released as part of the Lokal Småskaligt assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden on the 1st of February 2021, and to be honest with you, I'm a little bit surprised that this one hasn't been released already. I've had numerous beers in this series before with Citra in them and numerous other beers with Simcoe, but I would have thought this combination would have been done a little bit earlier, but not that I'm complaining, just a little bit surprised by it, to be honest. So yeah, it's a hop combination that I know very well. Citra of course comes in between 13 and 14% alpha acid, lots of lovely mango flavours and different tropical fruit complexities in there, whereas Simcoe is a little bit lower in alpha acid, about 12-13% if I remember rightly, and usually in New England IPAs it gives you a kind of soft passion fruity quality. So yeah, these two are two of the original high alpha acid American hops, so it should be nice to see how OO do with these beers when they put them into one of their 50/50 series things. So yeah, very, very curious to see how this one turns out. Always nice to try new installments in this 50/50 series from OO Brewing, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this beer as well. So yeah, let's get on with it then. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from OO Brewing before, and you will no doubt see more added to that list in the fairly near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel of course has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about OO Brewing then, on to my brewery notes. So OO Brewing, as I've told you many a time before, are based in Gothenburg, Göteborg, up there on the Swedish west coast, and the company was founded back in 2011 by Olaf and Ole Andersson. So these guys are childhood friends, and for many years they were also avid home brewers, and they'd just always been really interested in beers generally speaking. But Ole was apparently heavily involved in the Gothenburg beer scene since pre-drinking age, and he was the original head brewer at Stigbergets Brewery, and this is where a number of the original OO beers were produced. But while Ole is taking care of the brewing side of things, Olaf manages the business side of the brewery. For a good period of time he was working in Copenhagen, and I think doing a lot of the stuff for OO Brewing by distance. These days he is actually working in Gothenburg again from what I understand, and the two of them just want to make beers that they enjoy drinking themselves. But this brewery really kind of gathered momentum in April of 2017 when Ole left Stigbergets Brewery and he invested his time fully in OO Brewing. They invested in a brewery in the Hisingen area of the city near the Tingstead Bridge, and this facility that they have now is equipped with a 2,000 litre brewing system, and it means that they can brew up to a capacity of 500,000 litres of beer per year. In their first year in this brewery they brewed around 100,000 litres of beer, and they're planning to expand it up to capacity over the next few years. In 2019 they apparently brewed around 300,000 litres. I'm not sure what they managed to brew in 2020, of course, because of the whole pandemic thing, but I'm assuming it might have been a little bit short of the 500,000, of course. But 300,000 litres of beer per year as an output is pretty impressive. But they've been continuing to expand over the years. They've got quite a few different series of beers that they do. The 100 series is one of my favourites, the single hopped IPAs that they do. The 50/50 series, the dual hopped IPAs are always very nice as well. They've also got a series now called Ecor, where they choose one hop and they do the You know, they do the lupulin powder, they do the pellets, and they do the cryo hops of it as well. And they put all of the different kind of ways of processing these hops into the IPA. So that's another series that I think we'll see more of over the next little while. I think they've only done the Ecor, Citra and Mosaic so far, but I'm sure we'll see more of those in the future. But I love trying these kind of single hopped IPAs from these guys, and you know, when it comes to OO Brewing, that's probably the style that is most associated with this brewery, are the New England hazy IPAs. Ole Anderson is a very highly regarded brewmaster in Sweden, and that's mainly because he was the one who produced, you know, the OO Narangi, the Stigbergets Amazing Haze, and also the GBG Beer Week beer of 2016. So yeah, the brewer behind this brewery is responsible for a lot of kind of cult classic Swedish beers. They're very, very well respected, and probably in recent times the best beer that I've had from them would be the Charismatico. That was a really, really nicely done beer. So if you get the chance to try that one, I would highly recommend that you check it out. If you get the chance likewise to try some of the 50/50 series, the 100 series and the Ecor series, then I think you would enjoy those as well. Every so often they do brew Pilsners and Baltic Porters and various other different styles, and they are very capable within those as well. But New England hazy IPAs do seem to be the main focus. One of my favourite old school beers from these guys would have been the Muscles, which was re-released recently. So yeah, definitely make sure you check out those different beers. But as of February 2021, when I'm reviewing this beer for you, they've released around 75 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and that number will increase no doubt over 2021. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about OO Brewing for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all the different beers that they've done thus far. So yeah, that brings to end the history section of the video. Let's get on and actually have a look at the tasting of this beer then. So yeah, I'll just let you have a little brief look at the artwork on this one. So this 50/50 series that you get from OO Brewing, you always get the hops being kind of colour coordinated. So yellow is for Citra, and the sort of navy blue that we have down here is for Simcoe. You can see on the back, you always have this kind of data sheet sort of part from OO Brewing here. So there's the OO Brewing symbol, OO, Ole, Olaf, course. And yeah, other than that, there's not too much to say about the artwork on this one. So 440ml can, I think I paid 45 Swedish kronas for this one. So again, that translates to about €4.50, just a little bit over £4, maybe $5 American, something like that. So pretty good value for a 6.5% New England IPA. But yeah, 6.5% as we say, Citra and Simcoe, two of the classic higher alpha acid American hops. Let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the taste, and then just very curious to see what this beer has in store for us. So yeah, let's go for it. I'm trying to remember what the one I had from these guys last month was, but you know, it just goes right out of my head. I review quite a few beers from OO Brewing. I think it might have been Mosaic Equinox, come to think of it. So yeah, they've kind of gone for two completely different hops this month. I think there was a 100 series release within the last month as well. But yeah, as I say, I always recommend the 50/50 series and the 100 series if you're interested in learning about the different properties of hops, because they are very, very good for educational purposes. But yeah, this one's poured with quite a bit of head on it, but I'm sure that'll dissipate over the next little while. But as you can see with this beer, it's kind of poured as we would expect. If I shine the light through this one, it's got a very rich kind of medium darker yellowy kind of colour to it. If we compare this one to the fruit juices, as I always like to do with the New England IPAs, just because that's what they remind me of, I would say that this one is like, it comes across as like a mix of a kind of mango and passion fruit juice or something like that. It's got a wee bit of that slightly kind of darker yellowy kind of quality to it, but you can see that there's a solid finger of a frothy, I would say kind of cream coloured head to this one. I wouldn't say perfect white with this beer, but one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head there. But in terms of New England IPAs, this one is kind of pretty much what you expect from this style of beer in terms of its appearance. So yeah, the colour, like I say, a little bit of a kind of darker yellow. The colour in these beers, of course, is dependent on one, the type of malts that you use, and two, the length of the boil. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, thus you get a darker colour of beer. But in the first instance, it is dependent on the it is dependent on the type of malts that you use in the first place. And the level of haze on this one for a 6.5% is actually quite impressive. The level of haze depends on the oat and the malt content of the beer, and that varies from brewery to brewery, but theoretically speaking it should go up the higher the alcohol content of the beer. But this one, as I say, for 6.5%, this is one of the hazier ones that I've come across in recent times. But yeah, like I said earlier, nothing particularly surprising about this beer in terms of its appearance when you consider what style it is. Let's take a closer look at the aroma and just see how we get on with this one then. Yeah, that smells really pretty nice actually. There's just something kind of classic about this Citra Simcoe combination. It's been used many times before, but it just works. There's something just a little bit old school and familiar and just really kind of welcoming about this particular beer, in my opinion. I think we can say that. So where to start with it then? So I would say in terms of the malt base of this beer, it comes across as being really nice and smooth and bready and oaty. I would say it leans a little bit more towards the oaty side of things than I remember some of the other New Englands from OO Brewing being. And there's 6 different directions you can take these New England IPAs. They can be a little bit more kind of farmhousey and yeasty. They can be a little bit more kind of rye and grainy, wheaty and bitey, kind of oaty and creamy, sort of barley malt leaning and more soft and bready. Then they can also have a good little bit of brown sugary note to them. But for me, this one comes across as being quite it comes across as just really smooth and oaty in a lot of ways. You do get a little bit of the bitiness from the wheat at the back of the nose. You do get a wee bit of the softer kind of white bready notes from the barley malt side of things. But overall, I'd describe this beer as being really kind of smooth and creamy. And again, the other thing that you have to consider here is that Simcoe is a hop. As a hop, Simcoe really gives you a lot of kind of smoothness and creaminess in these New England IPAs. So I think Simcoe might be playing a little bit of a role in that there. But like I say, the base of this beer, soft white bready notes. You can smell a little bit of the oaty creaminess sitting on top of that. The oats almost give you a little bit of sweetness in this beer as well, to be honest with you. Yeah, I think that's fair to say. The oats are really giving you a bit of smoothness and then a wee bit of an almost kind of creamy sweetness in the latter part of the aroma. But you've also got a nice little bit of a sweet, you've also got a wee touch of kind of brown sugar in this one. You can smell a little bit of that kind of Werther's Original brown sugary sort of thing coming out of this beer, and that's a very common thing in New England IPAs these days. But you do get a wee touch of that kind of wheaty bitiness at the back of the nose as well, particularly when you take the aroma in quite deeply. But the malt base for me is really nicely balanced. Bit of barley malt in there, as I say, a bit of wheaty bitiness, and then the smooth kind of oaty creamy qualities coming out of the beer too. So I really appreciate that I really appreciate how all of these things kind of combine together. It gives you a very nice malt base in the beer, and I think that malt bases are a little bit kind of undervalued these days in a lot of the IPAs that we're drinking. So I think it's always good to have a nicely balanced malt base in here. But yeah, it gives you everything that you would want. On the hoppy side of things then, on the green side of the hops, for me there's a little touch of earthiness in this one. I would say that there's quite a big floral aromaticity to this beer. When Simcoe is like 12% alpha acid and Citra is about 13-14%, that's to be expected. So the floral aromaticity does have a wee touch of spice to it, I would say, but it's got a big kind of resonating sort of character as well. It's got a lovely big kind of just big smoothness to it, in all honesty, as well. But you've got a nice kind of zesty, grassy green component to the beer too, which again is to be expected to these hops. And the fruity side is exactly what you would expect from the hops, if you're familiar with them. But it's actually, the fruity side of this beer, it does have a wee bit of pungency to it. So let's focus on that then. So what you'll notice is that there is a wee bit of that kind of stronger grapefruity quality to this one. You do get quite a nice bit of pungent passion fruit out of the beer as well. Citra is capable of giving you a little bit of that darker grapefruit, and you'll notice that really strong pungent citrusy quality in the beer. You've got a nice kind of, you really have a kind of oily passion fruity quality as well, and that becomes more pungent, I guess, the more that you smell of this beer too, in fairness. But you've also got a kind of softer mango note to it. You've got a wee bit of an apricot-y quality, and then you've also got some kind of lemony, limey notes from the Citra as well, come to think of it. So yeah, I really like how this beer, I really like how this one goes together in a lot of ways. So yeah, it comes, this beer's a little bit nostalgic in a way because I know these hops pretty well and it just seems very, very familiar. So yeah, I'm just curious to see what it's going to taste like, to be honest with you. But if you're familiar with Citra and Simcoe, the aroma kind of gives you everything you expect. In terms of the New England IPA, it's a little bit more oaty leaning. It's got a nice big kind of bright green component to it, quite, really leaning towards the kind of floral aromatic side of things, and there's nothing wrong with that, of course. So do take a little bit of time to just kind of ponder over the aroma of this beer, but I think it's now time to have a taste of it. So this one is the 50/50 Citra Simcoe New England IPA, 6.5% ABV from Brewing in Gothenburg up on the west coast of Sweden. Let's get stuck in. Slange, skål, cheers. Yeah, that's interesting. This one, it has got a wee bit of a sort of, there's a real kind of creamy element to this one, and it's got a good little bit of sort of wheaty kind of thickness to it as well, actually, which I didn't pick up on so much in the aroma, come to think of it. So yeah, this one's a wee bit different from what I remember from the past iterations of this series, but nothing wrong with being a little bit different. But I do like it. I always enjoy these beers in the 50/50 series. These guys are a very capable New England IPA brewery, of course. Yeah, so where to start with this one then? It is, the more and more that I drink of this, it does feel like it's very thick and very kind of smooth and things like that. So yeah, the flavour profile of this beer is quite interesting in that sense. So let's focus on the malty side of things, as we always do first. So straight away with this beer, you can feel a little bit of that kind of pale malty, bready sort of thing. That just blankets the middle third of your tongue. Yeah, you really get a nice... you do get a wee bit of crispness out of this beer the further that you go into the aftertaste with it. So I like how that comes across in this one. But you'll notice very quickly with this beer, as you start to progress into the aftertaste, the malty side of the beer really thickens up quite a bit. I'm noticing that sitting on top of that kind of sort of lighter and crisper white bready sort of thing, there's a big oaty presence there. You can feel a nice layer of oats just sitting on top of that. You can feel a nice kind of layer of oats just sitting on top of that kind of barley malt white bready sort of thing. So yeah, that's a really interesting point to make about this beer. It really, this one feels quite a bit thicker than I remember some of the other IPAs in this series feeling before. But yeah, in the very centre of your palate, you will pick up a wee bit of a kind of Werther's Original butter candy sort of thing. It's not too prominent and not too sweet, I think, but yeah, it's quite, the malt base in this one is quite straight shooting in the middle third of your palate. Soft white bready notes, thicker oaty note kind of sitting on top of that, and that the oaty quality just kind of blankets that middle third of your palate as well, to be honest with you. Then there's just a wee touch of a kind of butter candy, Werther's Original sort of thing sitting on top of the beer as well. So yeah, that's definitely an interesting point about this beer. It really feels a bit thicker than some of the other ones in this series. But yeah, if you go towards that border region between the middle third and back third of your palate again, you do get a wee bit of a kind of touch more grainy sort of thing with this. I don't know if I'd go as far as saying it's like bread crust, but it's not a million miles away from that. But then on the back third of your palate, this is where the wheat really starts to come out in this one. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a wee touch of kind of Pilsner malt or something in this, because this beer, it does develop a wee bit of crispness to it the further you go into the aftertaste. So I wouldn't be surprised if there was just a wee touch of something like that in this beer. But yeah, on the back third of your palate though, you can feel that big kind of wheaty bitiness to the beer, and that develops the further you go into the aftertaste. But the wheat is really thickening up that back third of the palate too. So the back third of your palate really is a bit thicker than the middle third, but I think overall the whole beer itself strikes me as being quite thick. So yeah, back third of your palate, the thickness is like this, but then middle third of your palate is kind of like that, so it's not a million miles away. So as you come further forward, as you reach that border region between middle third and back third of your palate, thickness just drops away a little bit, and then you get a wee bit more of a you know, you do get a little bit more of a kind of smoothness kind of coming out of the beer as well. The middle third of your palate is definitely just very, very smooth. Other than that, I don't think there's too much to report on the malty side of things. So when it comes to the hops, again, if you know these hops quite well, this beer is what you'd expect. In the back corners of the palate, there's a teeny little bit of earthiness there. As you move further forward, it develops a little bit of a herbal quality, but as you reach the front corners of the tongue, it's definitely a little bit kind of brighter and floral and aromatic. I wouldn't describe this beer as kind of piney or resinous in any sort of way. It is more a kind of bright floral aromaticity that you're getting out of the beer, but then round the front curve of the palate, there's that nice kind of grassy component in there as well. There's a wee bit of zestiness to it, which I think suits it well, and yeah, that works into the whole vibe of the beer pretty nicely. But yeah, the grassiness that this beer has, the sort of zestiness that has just lingers into the aftertaste a little bit, and I think that just gives the beer a nice wee edge the further you go into it as well. And you get a wee bit more spiciness building out of the floral aromaticity as well, although I wouldn't describe this as one of the most bitter or one of the most kind of spicy beers that I've come across in that sense too. But yeah, I do like how this one goes together, definitely. But let's focus on that front third of the palate then. As I always say, that front third of your palate has that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So if you go to that border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you've got a really nice kind of bread crusty quality to the beer there. There is definitely a little bit more kind of graininess there, and you can feel a sort of smooth, soft, white bready and almost slightly oaty quality just underpinning the fruity section of the beer. So yeah, that side of it is really interesting too, I would say. But yeah, the way that the fruits come out in this beer, I think, is maybe the highlight of this beer. So if you go towards the back of that front third of your palate, you do get a wee touch of that you get a very slight touch of that stronger grapefruity quality, which I would suspect comes from the Citra in this case. But as you move further forward, you can feel that very pungent citrus just kind of mellows out a bit and becomes more passion fruity, and then you start to get the softer kind of mango components out of the beer. But yeah, the passion fruit, it's almost like the mango sort of forms the base layer of the fruit, and then you've got the pungent grapefruit, the slightly more pungent passion fruit just kind of sitting on top of that. And as you gradually go forward in the beer, you start to get a few other kind of complexities out of it. So it's kind of interesting with this one. The Citra and the Simcoe kind of seem to intermingle in terms of their flavours, if you like, rather than being quite separate as you get from some other hops in my mind. So yeah, you can feel the passion fruity elements of both of these hops just kind of mixing together and doing their thing. But yeah, as you move further forward on the palate, as I say, you get more of a mango type quality. You might get a few other kind of notes out of the beer, but I think the soft kind of mangoey and passion fruit qualities, they kind of just move all the way towards the kind of front edge of your tongue, to be honest with you. There's a wee touch of an almost gooseberry-like quality as you reach the very front edge of the palate, but not too much for me. And then you get a wee bit of a lemon-limey kind of thing mixing in with the more zesty, grassy esters out of the beer as well. So I mean, it highlights both of these hops quite nicely, in honesty, and I like it. You know, this is a hop combination that's tried and tested. It's survived the ages, if you like, and it works. You know, and I think OO have managed to highlight this quite nicely. As I said, I think this beer, the malt base in this beer for me is it feels a lot thicker than some of the other 50/50 series beers that I've had from OO Brewing before. Now I mean, I think the malt base in this one, maybe it could have done with being just a little touch sweeter and a little bit less thick in a sense. So yeah, that's the one thing. The malt base, I would say, in this beer doesn't quite suit the hop combination in my mind. It feels just a little bit too thick almost. So it could have done with being just a little touch more kind of brown sugary, or just a little bit lighter and more kind of bready leaning, rather than being more heavy on the oats and the wheat and stuff. But overall, you know, it's a nice beer, this one, and it is drinkable, and that's kind of what you expect from these beers. So yeah, thumbs up to OO Brewing once again. Is it my favourite 50/50 series that I've had? I'm not sure, but in honesty, I like the 100 series a little bit better. I like the single hop IPAs rather than the dual hop ones. But you know, in terms of learning about combinations of flavour and stuff, these are always very, very interesting as well. So yeah, definitely check out this series if you get the chance. But on the mouthfeel side of things, when it comes to this beer, I would say, yeah, kind of bottom end of full bodied for me, so it's got a hell of a body to it for a 6.5%er. Definitely fair to say that. The carbonation is very, very smooth. The mouthfeel overall, I would say, is, you know, really thick and almost quite creamy in a lot of ways. In terms of IBUs, I would describe this beer as being somewhere in the region of 30 IBUs, which is what you expect of a New England IPA these days. The malt base, like I said, it has a wee bit of crispness that builds on it the further you go into the aftertaste, but overall it's quite a thick, it really is quite a thick malt base that you get out of this one. The fruity side of things is it is quite juicy, I would say. It's got a bit of a pungent kind of citrusy note to it, and it's kind of smooth in some ways as well. So the fruity side of this beer, I think, has a lot of the complexity in this beer. But yeah, good little bit of hoppy bitterness, 30 IBUs, which is standard. The malt base is quite thick. Wee touch of sweetness develops on it a little bit later. In the centre of your palate, you do get a tiny little hint of that kind of Werther's Original butter candy type sweetness out of the beer, and then more kind of fruitiness. It does lean more towards that kind of smooth, juicy fruitiness the further into the aftertaste as well. But overall, another solid IPA from OO Brewing. As I say, perhaps not my favourite one I've had in this series so far, but I do prefer the 100 series, in honesty, to the 50/50 series. But I always enjoy trying the different 50/50 series beers as well. So yeah, really cool to review this one for you here on the channel. An age-old combination, Citra Simcoe, and you can't really knock this beer. I'm being really picky when I with my analysis of this one, right enough. But yeah, it's another really solid release from these guys. But yeah, not the most outstanding one, I guess you could say, within this series. So let's leave it there. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beeries in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from OO Brewing. Let me know what your favourite beer in the 50/50 series and the 100 series has been so far. That would be an interesting point of discussion. But yeah, thank you again for watching. Check out my social media, check out OO Brewing, and I'm sure we'll return to these guys at some point very soon. Slàinte, skål, cheers, catch you guys in the next review, and you'll see more from OO Brewing very soon, I'm sure.